You put that gun back on and you come out in the street. I'm going to give you just 1 minute. And then I'm coming back in after you.
Well, I'll just see what I can do about that.
Gunsmoke's Marshal Matt Dillon and Miss Kitty are one of Hollywood's most iconic on-screen couples, but even so, fans are still dismayed up until today as to why they never had the chance to make things official. What really grabbed people's attention was the subtle but clear tension between Matt Dillon and Miss Kitty. Given that Miss Kitty's final appearance on Gunsmoke was in 1974, it's impressive that almost 50 years later, both older fans and new ones are still tuning in and discussing the answers to those questions. And you'll be surprised to hear the answer from none other than James Arness himself. So, let's dive deep and find out what really happened. Gunsmoke kicked off as a radio show back in 1952. When they decided to turn those exciting stories into a TV series, they set out to find someone to protect Dodge City. Luckily, it seemed like a spotlight fell on James Arness, who was 32 at the time. John Wayne actually recommended him for the role, and he beat out a bunch of other contenders, including William Conrad, the voice of Marshal Matt Dillon on the radio. Standing tall at 6 feet 7 inches, James Arness was the perfect guy to bring a lot of different stories to life. He really understood the struggles of the world since he'd been through them himself as a World War II veteran. Basically, the studio and writers wanted someone tough enough to take on the pain, and that was definitely him. Throughout Gunsmoke, the Marshal went through gunshots, beatdowns, stabbings, and even got poisoned once. This role was just meant for James Arness, and stepping into it didn't require much change on his part. Amy Stock, who worked with him on 4 Gunsmoke films, pointed out how easily the Marshal moved from off-duty to being in action on screen. She recalled that the first time she saw him, he was wearing the Dillon hat, the coat, and a pair of tennis shoes. He was casually seated in his chair, still in his tennis shoes, when the filmmakers told him, "We're ready for you on set." He then took off his tennis shoes and slipped into his cowboy boots. Immediately, he went straight to his horse, and just like that, he transformed into Matt Dillon. She said that he was the perfect fit for the character. When Amanda Blake landed her role in the Western TV show Gunsmoke, she was in her mid-20s and super excited. She put in a lot of effort to get the part of Miss Kitty and was grateful to share the screen with James Arness, who played Marshal Matt Dillon. Fans quickly fell in love with Amanda's portrayal of Miss Kitty, the owner of the local saloon in Dodge City. Her looks really shined when the show switched from black and white to color in its 1966 season, which was around halfway through its run. Gunsmoke started airing in 1955 and kept going until 1975, totaling 20 seasons. James Arness stayed with the show for all 20 seasons as Matt Dillon, while Amanda Blake wrapped up her time as Miss Kitty during the 19th season. Throughout the series, the writers didn't fully dive into the details of Matt and Miss Kitty's relationship, but it was obvious there was something deeper between them. James Arness was born on May 26, 1923, in Minneapolis, Minnesota. He kicked off his impressive career as a radio announcer in Minnesota back in 1945. After moving to Los Angeles, he started getting noticed in the film industry. His big break came in 1947 when he landed a role next to Loretta Young in The Farmer's Daughter. That same year, he also picked up roles in a bunch of westerns. He appeared in the classic sci-fi movie, The Thing, in 1951, and that really helped boost his career. In the early 50s, Jim signed a contract with John Wayne's production company, Batjack. During his 3 years there, he worked on 4 films with Wayne. It was actually John Wayne who helped Jim get his biggest break in 1955, casting him as Marshal Matt Dillon in the new TV series Gunsmoke. The story goes that CBS originally wanted Wayne for the role when they were moving the show from radio to TV. He turned it down but recommended Jim instead. CBS agreed to give Jim a shot, along with 25 other folks, including Raymond Burr. After being picked to play Dillon, Jim was a bit unsure about jumping into television but decided to go for it. He ended up sticking with Gunsmoke for 20 years, racking up 3 Emmy nominations until the show was cancelled in 1975, making it the longest-running dramatic series ever. He also starred in 4 Gunsmoke TV movies, with the last one, Gunsmoke, To the Last Ride, coming out in 1992. After Gunsmoke, Jim kept chasing roles in TV westerns. From 1976 to 1979, he was in How the West Was Won, which is considered one of the best miniseries out there. His last TV series was a police drama called McLean's Law, which aired in the early 80s. Before becoming Hollywood famous, James Arness had quite the journey as a soldier in the U.S. Army. He racked up some serious honors, including the Bronze Star, the Combat Infantryman Badge, and a Purple Heart, among others. It's impressive considering he initially wanted to join the Navy as a fighter pilot but got turned away because he was too tall. The Army made good use of his height, though. When he landed at Anzio beachhead in Italy on January 22, 1944, they sent him first off the landing craft to check the water's depth. Just 10 days after arriving, he was in the thick of some brutal battles. On a pitch-black night on February 1, 1944, while sneaking through a vineyard, he heard voices and a scream, followed by a fierce firefight. He took some heavy machine gun fire that shattered his lower leg, and a nearby concussion grenade tossed him in the air as bullets flew around. The soldiers managed to win the battle, but Arness was left with serious injuries that led to multiple surgeries back in the U.S. to fix his leg. After being honorably discharged on January 29, 1945, he signed up at Beloit College and worked as a radio announcer, which set him on an unexpected path into entertainment. He hitchhiked to Hollywood in search of acting gigs and quickly became friends with John Wayne. When the role of Matt Dillon opened up, Wayne gave him a nudge, and that's how Arness became a household name as U.S. Marshal Matt Dillon. He portrayed a character who upheld the law with a strong sense of fairness and compassion. In the show Gunsmoke, Kitty Russell was all about love instead of drama. Amanda Blake, who played her, was just like that in real life too, pouring her heart into her work and her passion for rescuing dogs and cats. Amanda Blake was actually born Beverly Louise Neal in Buffalo on February 20, 1929, as the only child of Jesse and Louise Neal. She had some English and Scottish heritage and could trace her roots back to a Revolutionary War hero named Kate Barry, who helped warn patriots about the British and played a role in their victory at the Battle of Cowpens, which was a big deal for the win at Yorktown. When she was in high school, Beverly and her family moved to Claremont, California. She finished her studies at Claremont High School and then went on to Pomona College, but while studying, she got super into community theater, which started to take over her life. So, she decided to really go for an acting career. In the 1940s, she dove deep into acting, performing in summer stock productions in New England and taking part in theater and radio gigs back in Buffalo. To keep her dreams alive, she worked as a telephone operator while chasing her acting aspirations. Eventually, Beverly made her way to Hollywood after getting discovered by MGM. The studio had big plans for her and dubbed her the next Greer Garson, who was a big box office hit in the 1940s. She officially changed her name from Beverly Neal to Amanda Blake, looking for something a little more memorable. Amanda kicked off her career with a role in the movie Stars in My Crown and landed more than a dozen films and TV gigs in the early 50s. But her big break came in 1955 when she snagged the part of Miss Kitty Russell, the owner of the Long Branch Saloon in Dodge City. She starred alongside a then-unknown James Arness, who played Marshal Matt Dillon. The next 19 years were pretty amazing as they created one of the most beloved Western TV shows ever. Blake once said that being on the Gunsmoke set felt like being with family, and after her first divorce in 1956, she often hung out on set even on her days off because it gave her a sense of belonging. Although she didn't do many films between 1955 and 1974, she made plenty of guest appearances on shows like Alfred Hitchcock Presents, The Red Skelton Show, The Dean Martin Comedy Roasts, Tattletales, Match Game, and The Love Boat. In 1964, she married her second husband, Jason Seymour Day, but they divorced in 1967. Then she tied the knot with her third husband, Frank Gilbert, in 1967 and stuck with him until 1982. Since both characters were so likable, it made sense that viewers would imagine a romance brewing. But really, the romantic vibe between them was more than just fan speculation. But let's talk more about Miss Kitty and what some fans think is the possible reason why the couple never went official. She dressed in flashy outfits and served drinks to rowdy cowboys who often had a few too many. Plus, she was always ready to offer some wise advice and listen to their stories about cowboy life. This definitely doesn't sound like what you'd expect from a Sunday school teacher in 1955. It's not how a proper lady was supposed to act in the Wild West. Miss Kitty even kept a shotgun stashed behind her bar. She was a bold pioneer woman, way more captivating than most. She ran the show when it came to hiring and firing her waitstaff. The girls she hired were younger and a bit more daring than she was. The cowboys were tough, rugged, and a little wild, looking for more than just drinks and conversation after coming in from the cattle trails. Kitty and Matt clearly had a strong connection, but they never showed any public affection, a decision which was made by the show's writers and producers. They wanted chemistry between the characters instead of over-the-top displays of love and emotion. Arness made for an impressive lawman. He was a great shot and could handle a big horse, which made him a solid peacekeeper, though maybe not the ideal husband. So, if Matt and Miss Kitty were so crazy about each other, why didn't they tie the knot after 20 years together? Was Matt embarrassed by Kitty? She spoke her mind and could hold her own, drinking and shooting with the toughest of men. Maybe Dillon just wanted a wife who was more of a traditional homebody type. However, James Arness shared some thoughts on why Kitty and Matt never really got together in Gunsmoke. In his autobiography, he talked about how fans often wondered about Matt Dillon's relationship with Kitty and why it never took off. He explained, "Over the years, fans have often asked me about my character Matt Dillon's relationship with Kitty and why it never seemed to progress beyond the air of the romance between us. Amanda Blake was pretty adamant that no one should mess with her character." Arness clarified that the whole thing about their relationship was more about the producer's choice rather than anything else. He pointed out that was the producer's decision, since going a step further would complicate matters and might even lessen the show's popularity. Arness suggested that keeping the relationship subtle and a bit mysterious could actually be better for the viewers, even if they didn't see it that way. He added, "Our relationship was downplayed because they thought it was more titillating to leave matters to the viewer's imagination." The love between Arness and Amanda Blake as actors, though platonic, was still evident behind the scenes of the series. Arness praised the casting of Blake as Russell and said she was an example of the superb casting that made the program such a success. Arness also called Blake a wonderful actress and a great friend. One explanation frequently mentioned in the conversations was that a lawman could create enemies, and being recognized as Matt Dillon's girlfriend could put Kitty at risk. So, what was the nature of their relationship meant to be? Jim Burns, who wrote 34 of the show's finest episodes, recalls that they maintained a subtle approach. He said, "After the fade-out, there was an unspoken deal that after the Long Branch closed and Matt Dillon put up the 'closed for the night' sign, he'd go over to the Long Branch and go upstairs. But we never explored that. In fact, they flirted, teased, hugged, and walked off with their arms around one another, but they never kissed." James Arness firmly believed that the show's creators intentionally kept the relationship between Matt and Kitty ambiguous. They didn't want to change the show's core nature or the characters too much. This strategy seemed to work, as they received a lot of fan mail asking for more romantic development between the two. The producers wanted to keep viewers engaged and curious, so they maintained this level of tension throughout the series. He believes this approach was very successful. While Gunsmoke's writers were not about to marry off Matt and Kitty, they acknowledged that strains would develop, as would temptations. In Season 5's Kitty's Outlaw, Anson Pryor is a bad man from Kitty's past who tests her loyalty to Matt. In Season 8's The Way It Is, Claude Akins has time for Kitty when Matt doesn't. While in Cotter's Girl, Matt tries to help orphan Mariette Hartley and finds himself the object of her enthusiastic affections. In Season 12's Sarah, and Francis is a love from Matt's past, now running a way station for criminals and desperate to have Matt back. In Season 15's The Badge, Kitty sees Matt shot for the 11th time and can't take it anymore. She puts the Long Branch up for sale, moves to another town, and goes into business with Beverly Garland. In 1973, there seemed to be a shift in the dynamics between Matt and Kitty. Miss Michael Learned, known for her role in The Waltons, played a love interest for Matt in a storyline where he loses his memory. Their relationship develops, and they share a kiss, a rare occurrence for Matt. However, when Matt regains his memory, he returns to Miss Kitty. Interestingly, this storyline continued 17 years later in a TV movie. Miss Learn's character and Matt have a child together who is abducted. Matt, with the help of another character, searches for his child. In a twist, the other character expresses interest in marrying Miss Learn's character, mirroring the earlier romantic tension between Matt and Kitty. And in one of the later seasons, Miss Kitty encounters a man who gets injured while protecting her during a stagecoach robbery. This man proposes to her, leading to a heartfelt conversation with Matt. Kitty expresses her deep feelings for Matt and the long history they share. She questions whether their relationship has the potential to evolve into something more but ultimately recognizes the limitations of their situation. Matt, while acknowledging his feelings, leaves the decision to Kitty herself. Unexpectedly, that season marked Amanda Blake's final appearance as Miss Kitty. Now residing in Arizona and married, she found the regular commute increasingly challenging and often clashed with producer John Mantley. Their major confrontation revolved around Blake's costumes. Miss Kitty was always meant to appear sophisticated, yet Mantley hadn't allocated any budget for new outfits for Blake in several years. When she insisted on having a new wardrobe before continuing, Mantley dismissed her. He would later confess, "It was the biggest mistake I ever made." It wasn't just James who had something to say about the topic, Amanda did too. According to Amanda Blake, the folks behind Gunsmoke intentionally avoided diving into any romantic storyline between Matt Dillon and Miss Kitty. They figured that adding romance would mess with the Western vibe of the show and might turn off some viewers. Blake joked about the old Western stereotype where heroes are more into their horses than women, reassuring everyone that Dillon's feelings for Kitty were way deeper than his bond with his horse. She explained that Gunsmoke was designed to appeal to a wide range of viewers, using the charm of the Old West to connect with all ages. Because of this focus on historical elements, there wasn't much room for romance. Blake encouraged fans to imagine the romantic potential between Kitty and the Marshal since the show itself didn't really show any clear romantic moments. The series concluded after one additional season in 1975. Arness continued to star in the How the West Was Won series, the police drama McLean's Law, and portrayed Jim Bowie in the TV film The Alamo, 13 Days to Glory. However, the family from Gunsmoke reunited in 1987, and John Mantley brought Amanda back for the first of the TV films, Gunsmoke, Return to Dodge, penned by Jim Burns.